Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Dojo Talks. It is the day after the Grand Swiss, and for the first day in a while, we are not on Samarkand time, but the three of us have really enjoyed very much, not to spoil this episode, but the three of us have very much enjoyed the FIDE Grand Swiss. Um, awesome tournament. And so today we're just going to talk about different topics that have come up during this tournament. And I'm just going to kick it off by throwing it around to Kostya and then Jesse to just give your overall impressions on the tournament.
Yeah, great event, super fun to follow. It's like high stakes, high drama, lots of great chess, lots of surprises. The juniors are obviously very exciting to see this time around. And yeah, it's very interesting to see a tournament where it's all grandmasters and it's not just about the prize fund, it's really about the first two places. 11 rounds, it's just like brutal, everyone trying to get in. So yeah, one of the like most interesting tournaments to follow in a while. Well worth the early wake up times.
Yeah, totally agreed. And I have loads of takeaways, but the one thing that I think made this tournament so special was that we had the top players, in my mind, mostly avoiding competition because they were concerned. They knew about the rating deflation. They knew about playing little Indian kids or Turkish kids, and they were like, "Boss, I don't want any of it." So there wasn't a lot of tournaments happening before this, and then all of a sudden we have 11 rounds of the top players meeting. And to me, all of the takeaways are like, oh, while the chess world was kind of dormant, some people were really working on their game, others were becoming stagnant. And then the results, because we hadn't had any results for a while, like really were big in terms of winners and losers.
Hmm. Yeah. I also just loved this tournament. I thought the clashes were exciting. There was always good chess. There was such a variety of players and styles and different stories going on. And my first question is like, what would it take for us to have more of this tournament? Like tournaments like it or this tournament more often? Like, is why don't we have more of this? How could we get there? What, is it possible?
Yeah, fair enough. I think,
Good question.
if you think back in the day, we used to have the interzonal tournaments. And
Yeah.
this is kind of like the interzonal tournaments back then. That was like who gets to play against, like, there would be then who gets to play in the match sequence up to the world championship. But that was the whole thing. You had to qualify to get into those tournaments. And one of the things when we think about the qualifying process is if there wasn't weird things that were hard for fans to follow, like the World Cup or especially that FIDE circuit thing, then if they were just decided by tournaments like this, it would be amazing. And when you say tournaments like this, I think it's important to stress there has to be something at stake, right? Why did I actually the thing I one of the reasons I think this tournament was so great is even though Magnus doesn't care about the world championship anymore, all of these players from their just their youngest youth have been dreaming about being world champion. And people that you think might, as a fan, you might think they have no chance, they still carry the dream around, right? And so that's what brought them here. There wasn't like a huge prize fund. This was amazing. This is like the
So,
dream was that big.
so
Yeah.
somebody just tried to organize a huge open and they said the top 100 players in the world are invited, and here's $10 million
Yeah.
for the prize fund. You don't think that would draw the same kind of tournament that just the dream of the world championship did?
No, no. And you see it too. Like, um, it's so hard that for top players, their schedule is so packed that it's hard for them to do anything other than their schedule. And especially if you're playing for the world championship, your schedule's already set,
Hmm.
through the year.
So the only way in Jesse's mind that we would get more tournaments at this kind of a level with this kind of a field and combativeness would be if they were linked into the world championship cycle in some way, Kostya. So like you could have two tournaments a year giving two spots in the candidates, and that would be the only way to get in. Or some kind of zonal, interzonal.
You could
Yeah.
also you could
Before
also
these.
do it like they did back in the day where you would have to qualify to get into the interzonal,
Hmm.
right? So there's then a qualification to get into the qualifying tournament. you know.
Hmm.
That's always made sense to me, that kind of system where players are encouraged to win their like local, state,
Right.
national championships
Hmm.
to then qualify for the international world championship, whatever you wanna call it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's a big part of this. I mean, of course, because like in the final round, we saw so many players really pushing hard for the win, like trying to get into those first and second spots, whereas normally players would be very satisfied with just a decent paycheck from the final round and just
Hmm.
take a lot less risk and take less risk kind of throughout the tournament as they try not to kind of lose their standing.
And as an example, we have like US Championship coming up. It would be cool if maybe the first or second places of that tournament got a spot into some kind of qualifying tournament. Or me and
Well,
Kosar,
that is the case, right? Like a lot of times the US Championship is a qualifier for World Cup spots.
World Cup spots. Yeah.
but for the US, it does it like all those players are already going to get in, right? So it's not actually anything totally at stake.
Not always, but
Yeah,
sometimes like
sometimes. But
yeah.
also,
It
let's say
depends.
U.S. Masters, me and Coast are going to play there. That's a super strong tournament. Um, and that is a lot of times that's going to be for the FIDE circuit, but the fans don't understand the FIDE circuit. It would be cool if that was a qualifier, as just as an example, to put more at stake.
Yeah, I mean, just as a note, like I know that Shanklin went and played the Continental Championships in, I think, Brazil this summer
Right,
because it was a qualifier for the World Cup. Not a
right.
Yeah.
qual, not, I mean, it had spots in the World Cup,
Right,
and that's how we got into the World Cup. So that means there are players in the top 50 in the world who don't have automatic spots in the World Cup. They're qualifying this way and that. And I know, you don't love the World Cup as much as the Grand Swiss, but
right.
it has some kind of a system like that.
Yeah.
But then the other question I have for you is like most people were eliminated from getting the top two spots in the last round. And
Hmm.
even like two or three rounds before,
Yeah.
half the field was eliminated by round seven or
Yeah.
so.
Even more than half. Yeah.
Um, and then in the last couple rounds, people were just being eliminated really rapidly, right? Round eight, round nine,
Mhm.
just dwindling to a very small number of people. Yet there were still people fighting their hearts out, right? So they weren't fighting for the world championship. A lot of them. Uh, so do you really think that it's only the world championship that gives this kind of a fight?
Well, but when you're in the tournament,
Hmm.
unless you want to drop out and go home, you're fighting for rating, you're fighting for some prize money,
Yeah.
so it's not like, yes, it's sad that you missed out on your spot chance, but it's still a tournament. It's still like
You draw them in the door, and then
you got them in the door already.
and
Yeah.
they just
Now
have
it's
to
time to
fight their
fight.
heart out.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sure there was players who once their chances were killed, kind of like relaxed for the end of the tournament or just said like, okay, now I'm just like gonna take it easy, try to make some draws. And there were definitely a lot of players that played their hearts out until the very end because I mean, we're talking about a bunch of dedicated chess professionals, grandmasters, right? So a lot of them are gonna enjoy the game and be interested. And there's a lot of young players there are still improving. People that are still interested in maximizing like, their chess long term. Guys like Ivanchuk, for example, just
Hmm.
plays every game to the absolute death.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily about age. It's just like there's still players that are very motivated to play as much chess as possible. And then I mean, we've all had the experience when like an important tournament doesn't go your way, then you just kind of like, all right, let's just finish the event, go home, and then and figure it out. You lose all your motivation basically uh,
Hmm.
in the middle of the event. So I feel like both are, I mean, perfectly reasonable reactions.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wish there were a couple more tournaments like this, or they had a way to, up the level of some. There's some opens that are pretty darn entertaining for me at this point, especially in the Middle East. They've got a few tournaments where it's like open to players over 2,600 FIDE
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
2,550 FIDE. And those are like beastly tournaments. And they get a few 2,700s, right? But this tournament had 18 of them, right? So I feel like it's maybe not that far away for some of the big opens to get a few more top players in there, and then they could be close. I know it wouldn't quite have that world championship shine, but I don't think it's impossible for one of these, GM opens to attract, five more 2700s if that were important to them. I'm sure they could come up with a way to.
Well, let's think about the recipe that allowed FIDE to have a really successful Grand Swiss. Um, I mean, truly what happened is that they co-opted the Isle of Man International, which was already a fantastic event that I played a couple times. And I remember the year they announced that that tournament was going to be the FIDE Grand Swiss and no longer open to players under like 2,500 or 2,600, right? And I was very sad. I'm still miffed about that. We lost a great tournament. But it worked out perfectly for FIDE because they co-opted this event. The first year or two, they ran it on the Isle of Man. So it was basically just the same tournament that it was, except with much stronger players. And now they've since moved that tournament elsewhere. Like this time it was in Uzbekistan. So if they kind of expanded like the FIDE circuit and then tried to co-opt some of the other largest events in the world, then I feel like they could have multiple. So like the Qatar Masters, or if they basically take over one of these events, that would be the way to do it.
Right. Maybe they could somehow call them like the Grand Slams of chess, like give some tournaments like some kind of extra title or like a shiny cup, or maybe include something in the Grand Chess Tour, like an open instead of just those rapids and blitzes and one or two round robins.
Well, I think there were talks. I think there were talks between FIDE and Grand Chess Tour about
Hmm.
making maybe getting a spot from the winner of the Grand Chess Tour, or like
Yeah.
giving a spot to the GCT to figure it out. But I
Yeah.
presumably they fell through.
Okay.
Yeah.
My opinion is that there's probably some way to replicate one or two more of these tournaments or bring some more tournaments to this excitement level. Even if not every, even if there isn't that many, world champion spots to go around and boost every tournament with. But okay, we'll leave that an open question for now. And, in the comment section, folks, if you have any ideas for how to, make the tournament circuit more robust, get some more of these opens up to this kind of a level so we can watch this kind of spectacle more often. We'd love to hear your ideas on that.
I thought my idea was good from our episode about Naka at the end, because we talked about the candidates, where
Mhm.
I thought like if you just expand the FIDE circuit to have like qualify like 8 players a year, and
Yeah,
then you have some kind of knockout at the end with
do
like
the
the 8,
full circuit.
16, 32 players that qualify from the FIDE circuit,
Hmm.
then year round you would have all the top players forced to go out to the existing tournaments, do their best there, get points for the
Right.
FIDE circuit. All
Mm.
the top opens
Yeah.
would obviously benefit from this. Of course, you would still have the closed events that would be worth it for the FIDE circuit as well. But generally, FIDE can make whatever rules they want. They can say like you have to play at least 3 opens, you have to play a tournament in 3 different continents. They can make any rules they want that will like encourage people to go out and play as many events as uh, as possible. I feel like that would kind of be the win-win situation for everyone.
It was a great idea overall, and maybe one of the key components of it was your idea. I remember you said that there would be like 16 spots instead of eight, and then maybe like, a knockout round or a match or something, right? To dwindle it down. If you had like 16 candidate-ish spots to dole out instead of eight, that would let you do some more creative things in terms of attracting people to a few more tournaments over.
Exactly, and it would like virtually guarantee that the top players that are playing all get in, and we don't get the situation where it's like like last year we had 2 or 3 players having amazing years, and then Fabi ended up winning the FIDE circuit. I think Arjun was like really close in second. I forget who else, but then it's like, okay, well, Arjun's just like left out.
Yeah.
Whereas like if there's more spots available, then all the top players would effectively get in as long as they're playing.
Yeah. Okay, so bloody tournament, two players managed to emerge at the top.
Yeah.
Uh, like a dog pile of, corpses and people clawing their way towards the top, right? And so getting to the top of that was a brutal business. And those two players were Anish Giri, sole first place in the tournament after a last round win, and Matthias Blubaum, or Blubaum, one of the leaders throughout the tournament, draw in the last round, best tie breaks because he'd been on board one or board two for ages at that point. Jesse, what are your thoughts on those two players' performances at this tournament or this year? Where do you see those two players right now?
I got a lot of takes that I want to get into, but I want to first say something obvious. And we talked about this in the when we talked about the World Championship. one of the main reasons why this event is so amazing is because, in contrast to like when I was a kid and the interzonal and the matches, you only found out about that months later, dude. Months later. So all of the excitement and tension was gone as a fan. You just got the results and you're like, cool. Cool. Maybe I can look at some games, you know? Now, it's really cool that we have this amazing ecosystem of every language or almost every language has their own streamer covering something like this. You go and we're watching, let's say, the any of Keimer's games or Bluebaum's game on just the feed. So another great thing, actually, you get to see the players live when they're playing. You look at, say, that one, it was all German commentary. You look at other ones, it's all like their national is just dominating the chat in those windows. Amazing. And I just
Mhm.
want to say something about this. So if you are, let's say, a soccer fan or an American football fan, you are forced to get the coverage that's owned by that league, right? You are forced, and it's a lot of times expensive, prohibitory, and it's not customized to you. It's just like usually the coverage is not like a fan. It's like some kind of mildly objective sounding person going, "Hooray, that's cool," blah blah blah. But it's not like a fan.
Mhm.
Here you can watch whatever you want to watch, whether it's our stream, the FIDE stream, the Spanish stream, the live feed. You can turn on the computer if you want.
Chess Base India.
Just Space India. You can do all of these different things, and it really it just makes it this incredibly amazing spectacle where you have
Right.
all these fans suddenly following along and feeling the tension of the moment. You
Right.
just didn't used to
Hundreds
have
of
that.
different like specialized rooms around the internet.
Yeah, dude, amazing. And so I feel like we've talked about Queen's Gambit and other, how COVID helped chess and all this other stuff, and that's true. But this, I feel, the fact that it's different than, let's say, American football or soccer, the way it's streamed, I think it's a huge bonus for the way we get to enjoy chess and expand it.
Well
Nice.
said.
Yeah. Okay. We got our takes. We need to go through our hot takes on this. David asked about the two winners. You know, I feel like one of the things about we got to say about both Anish and Bluebaum especially is they were very good at letting other people kill themselves, especially Bluebaum. I mean, we came up with the phrase the Bluebaum Gambit, and that just means, you're the lower rated player and you just kind of sit tight and realize that these guys in their head they have to beat you, and then they go crazy, and then bam, you got him, baby, you got him.
Bam!
No, I mean, and full credit to him. I mean, he was
Yeah.
strong enough to take advantage of both Prague's and Arjun's mistakes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
beat them.
Oh yeah, you got to be really in control to play the Blue Bomb Gambit. I mean,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you have to be better than they think you are. It
Oh, of
only
course.
works
Yeah.
up to a point, right? Because once they realize how good you are, they're willing to shed zero point 0.4 rating points and make a draw. It's not really like they have to beat you once they
Hmm.
realize you're good.
Yeah. No,
Um,
he got him. He got him hook, line, and sinker in this tournament.
okay, I just want to say something obvious though about Bluebaum is I don't we'll see if he actually is going to be thankful for this opportunity. We talked in the broadcast about how Abbasov was not thankful at the end of the day. It's like, no, I shouldn't have been there. Could be that way for Bluebaum. It's clearly a chance of a lifetime, but I think every reasonable chess fan kind of says the reason he doesn't belong there is he doesn't actually have a chance of winning the candidates tournament. There's no reasonable person who's going to believe the guy has a chance. Will he play a factor? Of course. He'd play a huge factor in who wins that tournament, you know. But I don't think he has a chance. And so as a chess fan, it's definitely a bummer that the guy's in there. And
Yeah.
there was a horrendous joke on stream. So sad. I mean, we're going to talk about Gukesh in a second, but the joke was the problem with Bluebaum getting in is that we're not going to have a world championship candidate cycle where everyone has a higher rating than the rating world champion.
Okay.
Oh man, that was cold. Oh,
All right.
that was
Boo.
so
Here come
cold.
the comments.
Boo.
Let's talk about Blue Bomb, of course, because like we've seen this before, and like every candidates, it's like the same kind of game gets played. We had it with Abbasov, we had it, I think, with Kirill Alexienko in our previous candidates. Now, Alexenko was 27-30 around the time of candidates. And so, you can't say he's like a weak player in any regard, but he was still a clear kind of outsider in that event. And it felt like people were targeting him in the candidates. Like the other candidates were looking at that game and like trying to beat him essentially. And it's not clear. I mean, Jesse, you said we don't know if Abasov is happy or not that about the fact that he played the candidates. That's only in his heart, right? But we can see like him and Alexenko, it's not like they've since like tremendously raised their level, right? I
Right.
think they've roughly stayed at their rating or went down. So it's not
Yeah.
like it was just a career, explosion for them.
Hmm.
That could be for any number of reasons, but you might think that, if it's like a young junior that plays in the candidates at a lower rating, you might think, okay, that's going to be great for their development. But if it's someone who's like established and it's like going into it, they kind of know they're going into the water, like the shark waters,
Yeah.
essentially. And then both of those guys finished last, right? In their candidates,
Yeah.
we think Bluebaum's most likely going to finish last. Like, I mean, of course, as a professional, I'm sure he's excited about the opportunity. I'm sure he's going to take it, but then it's like, and fully deserving. So this is the thing I think people don't understand. It's multiple things can be true at once. He can be deserving of a spot in the candidates because he got second in the Grand Swiss, such as like, he got maybe a little bit lucky, but still he got through. And you can also say that like he's not going to have a good time in the candidates.
Yeah.
And you can also say that we'd rather have one of the top players. Like I would personally love to, I'd rather had Faruja in there or Keimer,
Hmm.
one of the top guys, right? Again, with all due respect to Matthias Blubaum, who is a very strong
Or
grandmaster.
Kostya. I think if people still think he's like guaranteed to finish last, he might be able to pull the Blue Bomb Gambit one more time because I mean that seemed to be exactly the thing that didn't work against him, right? Is being like, this guy's my point. Um,
Yeah, well, that was also a question. It's like, can he continue the blue bomb gambit slash effect into the
mhm,
candidates?
right. Get to the world championship match, and the world champion's like, I got to beat this guy. Like, he's my weakest opponent in this match.
Right all the way up to the top. I mean, he has an interesting story, right? Apparently, people are saying that he was not, I mean, he doesn't consider himself like a true chess professional, maybe not until recently. Now he's taking it more seriously. He graduated school not that long ago.
Hmm.
And he's had an incredible year. He won the European Individual Championship, which is a very, very strong tournament that people usually don't win uh, clear.
Right. So I've got a stat for you on this topic, right? Because I think Blue Bomb, it's hard for us to evaluate his strength and like where he belongs because he appears to be much better than he was a year ago and 1 year out of school but we're just not used to seeing a trajectory of somebody at age 28 suddenly
Hmm.
peaking, right? Because a year ago, he might have been about number 100 in the world, right? Now he's going to be in the top 40. So Blue Bomb has gained the second most rating points in the last year of anybody in the top 100. The only person who's gained more points than him is Erdomas,
Hmm.
right? So the second biggest gains. And unfortunately, I don't have like a performance rating list
I
for
do.
the year. You do?
He had a performance rating at the tournament of 28-20.
Oh yeah, but I mean for like the
Oh,
year.
for the year.
Like
Yeah.
if we were to assess him, because one tournament could be, well, one game plus or minus, is like a 40 point difference in your performance rating, 1/2 point. Um,
Hmm.
you could say, oh, lucky tournament, lucky streak, right? But how good was Blue Bomb really going into this tournament, right? My question is, won the European Championships. If we had a more up-to-date rating, so to speak, or a rating
Hmm.
list that reflected, let's say, performances in the last 9 months, or something like the ATP Tour tennis rankings or something like that. Where would Blue Bomb have been going into this tournament? Would he have maybe been in the top 10 instead of number 50
Okay,
for
okay,
the
Nim,
year?
but like you said, we don't know what to do with Bluebaum. I do. Okay, it's very
Okay.
simple. The guy's 28. He's going to the tournament 2671, gains 22 points, and he still isn't 2700. Still isn't
Mhm.
2700. So at 28, yes, you can probably make some progress. It's great. It's great that he's doing it. But if he were 18 and we're here, then I would be like, okay, well, this guy might be a true competitor. This guy might really be in here. But at 28, No, there, you can make some mild gains, bro. Sure, congratulations. But you're not going to be playing suddenly 2750 chess all of a sudden. That's not the way it works. So I think for the candidates, maybe he can perform if he's lucky at a 2700 level. That'll still get you squashed, you know? So,
Yeah, I think there's a lot to what you're saying, Jesse. Like to compare, Parham Magsudlu was leading
right.
the event early on.
Yeah.
Super impressive.
Hmm.
And one of the most impressive things to me was this interview he gave, where he basically said that he lost 3 years due to COVID. He had wanted to be world champion 3 years ago. He just said all this on camera. He's like
Hmm.
his plan was to be world champion 3 years ago already, but he lost time during COVID. Then he got back into it. Now he's super motivated again. And I remember like him several years ago, he was always an incredibly motivated guy. So if it
Hmm.
was someone like Parham that won the event and he like gives all these interviews where like, yeah, I'm super motivated, I'm gonna become world champion,
Yeah.
like I'm unstoppable, then I think we'd be very excited, even though Parham he's younger than Bluebaum, but he's a
Yeah.
little bit older than the kids. Bluebaum in his interviews to his credit, I have to say, I actually quite like it. He's very humble,
Yeah.
and he was always saying that like he's getting a bit lucky. People are over pushing against him. He just happens to be in good form. I very like this humility about him, but then yeah, it also makes me believe that he doesn't think he can win either.
Hmm.
Hmm.
And actually, since you mentioned the main man there, Maksudla, I want to just touch on him. So he was like 4.5 out of 5. It seemed like he was a shoe-in at the
He
early
Ferrugia.
phase of the
Yeah.
tournament. He was had gained at a certain point. I think he had gained 30 points and was well above 2,700. And then he just completely crashed and burned. And I just want to say there's a lot of cruelties. This was a very cruel event. And I think the cruelty for him was you look around the playing hall. And in contrast to like when I was a kid, if you looked around a strong tournament at playing hall, you would see a lot of unfit physically players. Now the game has become so competitive, you do not see a lot of unfit players. In fact, I think of the top players, Maxudlu is the only one who's unfit. And I think you got to say in hindsight, like, oh, if he had been fitter, he could have withstood the tension and the pressure going into the final rounds because it really was a marathon. Like he had a great start to the marathon and then he totally collapsed.
I mean, maybe it's a fitness thing, maybe it's also like an energy thing. Like he was going all out in every game and maybe just
Hmm.
ran out of steam, whereas other players maybe like paced themselves a little bit more. Bluebaum, for example, right? Maybe we could say he's in good shape, but he had that like really short draw against Nihal Sarin with white. We all
Hmm.
criticized him for it,
Yeah.
but he did manage to save his energy for last final rounds, perhaps.
Hmm.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So the evaluation of Bluebaum, Jesse says it's impossible that he's suddenly a top 30 player at age 28. Kostya says seems like he himself doesn't expect to compete for the world championship. He's just probably enjoying chess and playing pretty well and on good form. I'm still going to leave a question mark on it for myself. I'll be conservative with my evaluation, say I'm waiting to see what he does at his next couple events. And then thoughts on Anish, who is, one of the older players at this point making a run at the World Championship. But he has, in contrast to the Bluebaum interviews, Kosi reference, he has clearly said, like, I'm going to go out and say it. Like, I really want to be world champion.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I think that might be powerful for him. Of course, Anish has played the candidates before, so I think anyone that's gone into the candidates already probably rightfully believes they can, do it again. And he's been a top player for many years. So, but yeah, it was like maybe a year or two ago that he kind of started saying again, like, no, my goal is still to become like world champion. It's always been the dream for me. Actually, when Jesse gave that spiel, or David, you gave that spiel at the beginning about players who I think it was Jesse who gave that spiel about players who dream about becoming world
Yeah.
champion despite Magnus leaving. One of the first players that came to mind was like Anish. It's like
Right.
Anish is, a little bit younger than Magnus, but still dreams of the world championship title.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that interview he gave where he was like, Gukesh is the world champion. He has bad tournament right now. I can also have bad tournaments. Why can't I be world champion?
I
Great
also have bad
logic.
tournaments. It could be me.
Well, and actually,
Love
there
it.
was an earlier interview that he gave that really turned me on to how players who we might not think have the greatest chance of becoming world champion, such as Anish, who was before he had had a bad run, he would fell below 20th in the world and all this stuff. But it was still like a dream he had and like a fire of that dream, which turned me on to the fact that it's like, right, all of these players that they're 26 something, and you as a fan might not think they have any chance. They are still holding the fire in their hearts. And
Mhm.
they're dreaming of the world championship, even if Magnus has thought it's a chump thing to do. They're not giving up on no dream. This is amazing for them. Yeah.
I think Anish gave up on it at some point and then rekindled it.
Yeah,
I
that
think there
could be.
was a couple year period where where he'd sort of like given up. He's like, I can't make it. I can't become world champion. Like, I'll be a number 10 player or a number 8 player
Uh-huh.
and I'll be popular in the chess world. He was making such funny jokes on Twitter. During that phase, I feel like he was putting energy into being like, a great chess player and personality, but not like questing after number one single-mindedly.
Yeah. And
And I think like something, happened or changed. We set different priorities over time, right?
hmm
And then he was like, no, I actually, this is what I want. I'm making a choice, I'm committing. Uh,
and what I wanted to add on that one, which is interesting about one of the things he said, and in term that really applies to this quest to become world champion, is, for the longest time there was like the Magnus generation and they were completely dominant, right? So Magnus, Hikaru, guys like Anish, guys like Wesley So, and they're still around, but for years it was just those guys, Fabi, right? They're all around the same age. And they were dominant for so long, and now we got all these kids. I'm sure we're going to talk about it a little bit now. But Anish is suspicious of the chess knowledge of these kids. And one of the things that was interesting about how he played was, in contrast to everybody else, he tried to beat players in minimalistic endgames, especially the kids. He tries to beat them in minimalistic endgames, and he was successful.
mhm,
Like games where maybe you don't even have nothing. Maybe you don't got nothing, but
mhm,
he's going to try to beat you. And he won some really nice endings. And it's
yeah,
kind of like the chess of old, the chess of the old school, right? Beating the young kids. So I think that was to me, that was an interesting part of the story of this generational battle, where when I look at a lot of the way, let's say the way Gukesh played the endgame against Arjun, that was a draw early on in the tournament. It was kind of felt like I was looking at it, I was like, right, I think like older classical GMs would look at this and be like, these kids are just playing for calculation. They don't have a feel for how these endgames should be played. And I think that's what Anish is seeing in their games. And he's like, oh, maybe that's why I can beat these kids. Maybe why that's why these kids aren't so tough.
Well, that's interesting. I was actually thinking about this, and I was wondering, like, why is it that a kid, like a teenager, like Prague or Arjun, Gukesh, Noterbeck, Keimer, why is it that they can compete with like older grandmasters that have way more experience, way more kind of like deeper opening knowledge? Like, why is it they can just compete on they have the same rating, right? So they have
Right.
seemingly equal level. And I was like, well, the kids must be ahead of the older guys in calculation just like in the
hmm
concrete stuff, right?
Yeah.
mhm,
To kind of make up for it. And so, of course, it's very natural for the older guys to then want to steer away from those types of positions.
yeah. Okay, now let's introduce my like maybe number one topic for this uh,
Okay.
tournament, which is the gap or lack of gap between 2600s and 2700s. The groups have been largely segregated, where the 2700 players mostly play in their own circuits, right? Like the Grand Chess Tour, you have to be
hmm
an elite club member, or even like the freestyle events. They officially had like a players club, the most elite club in the world, and they're all 2700s. They play in round robins instead of opens, and okay, we've seen a few people playing in opens as part of the FIDE circuit for getting into the qualification. So it's starting to bleed a little bit, but a lot of segregation and then hungry, hungry 2600s, none of whom have enough to eat, kind of. They get thrown in together in this tournament. And there were a couple rounds early on where there was just a spate of upsets, right? And we're like, wait,
It's
what is
happening.
the gap? Is there a gap, right? And Rachel, who was there, Rach Angel, who was doing interviews for Take, 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 she asked my question to Nihal. She asked Nihal, right? What is the gap? What is the big difference between
Hmm.
2600s and 2700s?
Okay, yeah.
And Nihal said, there's not much.
Hmm.
My whole life, I'd grown up thinking that like the higher you got, the bigger the difference between a small number of points, right? Like if you were 2720 and you wanted to get to 2730, oh boy, you needed to learn a whole lot of stuff because the difference would be huge, you know? What do you guys think? Did the 2700s get raked over the coals by the 2600s? Did they have their rating points reappropriated? Or did they hold their own? Did they prove no, the class rises to the top in the end?
Okay, so I definitely think there's a huge difference between even a 2700 and a 2750. And in my earlier example with Bluebaum, if he performs at 2700 at the candidates, he's still going to get body slammed. Like you're still going to get body slammed. It's a statistical thing. You know, you might win a game or two, but you're going to get body slammed over the long run. And while Bluebaum is the exception to this rule, if you just look at the standings, the people who were lower rated, who made epic gains, were all kids, right? And so I want to just mention the main winners, right? Mishra gaining 40 points. Woodward, dude. Woodward, he had a technical chance to getting a spot in the last round, gaining
Oh,
33 points. Our Dogmoose and Gorell gained less, but they were epically impressive, right?
yeah.
So you look at those guys and you say, right, there's maybe not a difference for them, but they're growing immensely and they haven't had the shot that they needed that this gave them to be like, oh, I'm gonna prove that I got it. And they got it, buddy. Those kids really got it, man. You know, that maybe Anish is gonna take them out in a technical endgame, but they definitely have epic skills. And I'll
Yeah.
mention, actually, I want to mention a Wonder. Wonder is still pretty young, has recommitted to chess, and now he broke the 2700 barrier. Amazing.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of this seems like it comes down to mindset. Nihal is a interesting person to comment on this because he went above 2700 during the tournament. So
Yeah.
he's like, there's not much difference. I'm the same guy who was under 27, above 27, right?
Yeah. Right.
So
I
he's
just spent 5 years at 2692 and now I'm 2702.
I'm the same guy.
Wasn't that big a difference? One good week.
Um, but yeah, I feel like, well, as Jesse was saying, a lot of the 2600s that caused waves were on the younger side, Mishra and all the other juniors. Parham was another one who's like still younger. But again, Parham for me has that insane mindset where he believes he can just beat anyone in the world. And I think if you're a very strong 2600 grandmaster with that mindset, then I think, yeah, your chances against the 27s aren't that bad. But if you're a 2600 with the mindset like, oh, the 27s are stronger than me, then I think it gets a lot tougher. It's like this thought experiment where you put a human brain inside of the mind of a tiger, and then it's going to be afraid of all other tigers, right? So if you have two tigers, you tell one of them, hey, you're 2600, you tell the other you're 2700, they might have the same strength and aggression, but the 2700 is suddenly going to feel like the stronger tiger. And I think there's a little bit of that going on when two players face each other because we all feel it psychologically, even if we don't know our opponent at all. If they have a higher rating than we do or lower rating than we do, we just instinctively feel a certain way about that opponent. We feel like, oh, I should be stronger or I should be weaker. And I think most chess players kind of act accordingly. And I would imagine that a lot of the players at the top aren't really immune to this, but the ones that are seem to be doing great. Like Anish, for example, on paper is a 2700 player, but in his mind, he's like, no, there's no difference between me and anyone that's a candidate, anyone that's fighting for the world championship. And so that maybe allows him to strive for very high highs.
That's
Um,
interesting, Kostya, because I can tell you when I was a kid, I didn't think that. The like assumption that someone higher rated than you is better than you.
yeah, and look at
When I
how
was a kid,
many
it was just
nice
like
upsets you have,
that's a
right?
bigger meal.
Over and you've beaten like so many strong grandmasters, right? Like I think partly due to because of that mindset. Like you've beaten so many players that are like 300 points above you, and not through a blue bomb gambit kind of way. Through you just went out and tried
No, I
to
just like went
drive
out
it.
like they should never ever like be at the board with me. Like that was sort of like Yeah.
Yeah. And from my experience, I feel like I tend to lose more to low rated players when they just go after me, sacrifice stuff, just try to play the best possible chess versus players that try to just kind of hold up and defend. Um, so I think there's a lot to this mindset thing that, is not really explored because chess is just like so much focus goes on the rating. And I think for the most part, the ratings do make sense, but they can also cause players to kind of defeat themselves before the fight even starts.
Let me take another one that's related to this. My takeaways is I took a look at how the old guys did. You had a number of veterans in here, and
Mhm.
basically they got body slammed. Gelfand lost 16 points. Aronian, to probably his last chance, negative 22. Grishuk lost points. Nepo lost points. Ajanov lost 24. Yubava lost 17. So you ask, like, where did all the points go that these kids took? They took them from the old guys. They took him from the old guys, and that's just part of the brutal reality is chess has always been a young man's game, but it's getting younger. It's getting younger now as like we're beginning to understand, I feel that 28, where Bluebaum is kind of like your peak age, and then you're going to start steadily declining from there.
But Ivanchuk and Shirov did great.
They did okay. They didn't do great.
No, 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 they did. They got plus scores. They had like 2,700 performances. Shirov 2,750 performance.
Uh-huh.
I
Yeah.
mean, he's a whole. I mean, he's a generation beyond Aronian. You know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, class never fades.
Yes, it does.
It
Yes, it
does.
does.
It does.
Does
But
it?
I mean, it was pretty special that Ivanchuk and Shirov could play like that.
Uh-huh. I mean,
Yeah.
Shirov got 21st place. The guy was what's, two or three in the world. Now he's already down to 26-16, and now he's going to go back to 26-36. It's nowhere, he's dropped, dude. He's dropped. I mean, yes, you can have a good event once in a while, but bro, but bro, he's nowhere near to where he used to be.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So despite Ivanchuk and Shirov's valiant efforts, Jesse thinks the old folks continue to bleed.
They bleed. They bleed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Here's another basic takeaway I want to put out there before we finish up. Um, so at the moment, we only have 3 spots left, right, for the candidates tournament. And there are going to be people who I think deserve to be there who are not going to be there. And I want to mention 5 names, maybe 6, that now at least let's put 6 names out there. I could do more, but 6 names who are not going to make it. 3 of them aren't going to make it. Okay, so we have Eric Geisy. That guy should be in there. It's going to be it's a very tough ask to get one of the top 3 spots in this tournament that I think we're going to be covering. It's a knockout tournament. All kinds of crazy stuff can happen. Me and David
World
do
Cup.
not like that there's a rapid playoff and other weird things like that. So there's definitely some randomness in it. We got Ferrugia. Oh, I thought he played some good chess in this tournament, man. Ends up
Mm.
not being able to beat Bluebaum. Ouch.
He
Ouch.
was so close.
So close. And then the other
In this
person,
tournament.
super close. Oh my God. Me and Kostya were already celebrating for him, as were the German fans, was Keimer. And
Yeah.
he blew it in his game against, it's just a brutal tactic that he misses against Bluebaum, and Bluebaum draws
Yeah.
again. So Keimer, huge name, not in there. Abdu Senior, right? He's not in there, and not yet, right? And I want to give a shout out to Nepo. Maybe Nepo's also an example of a guy who's getting a little older, has fallen distinctly in the rankings.
Mm.
He's down to number 19 now.
Yeah.
Used to be obviously up there. And then finally, I want to mention Neiman. I have been hard on Neiman in this podcast. We had questions about could he become world champion, and I wanted to reduce that. Could he be top 10? I said basically very little chance of being top 10. He is still not top 10, but he showed me through a variety of sequences, like in these games, where he played incredible chess, right? Incredible
Hmm.
chess. And so I want to just do a mild take back. I still don't think the guy is going to be world champion, but I'm going to do a take back and say he showed me something in this event.
Right.
And at least he deserves as part of the to be part of the conversation now of the players I would mention that maybe should be in this candidates tournament. In any case, that's six players who there's only three spots for. And what I'm going to also predict is I think there's just given the randomness of this World Cup thing that we're going to cover in November. Due to the randomness, we're probably going to get another name that we haven't heard of. Last
Yeah,
year
it
we
might be
had
only one or
Matthias.
two of the
Exactly.
six that
Exactly.
get
So,
in.
so a lot of those players simply aren't going to be in the candidates. And to me, it's a bummer, but it's going to be spicy. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Han's very impressive in this tournament. He had chances all the way until the end. Didn't lose the game until the very last round
Yeah.
against Giri. And basically just like if he had slightly different pairings, he had like earlier black and then white in the last round, then maybe he would have had a chance to qualify. But yeah, definitely he seems to be one of the kind of like dark horse favorites for the World Cup. He has all
Oh,
these
yeah.
like, quick match experiences now as well. And he's one of these players we're talking about that's just like super motivated. He's had the world champion, mindset for several years now that's his goal. That's what he wants to do. No one above him, all the top players above him are nervous to play him. He can beat anyone in the world. He's
Yeah.
coming for them. And it's like some of that might be just like bravado, right? But I'm sure some of it is also genuine
No,
at
people
this
people are
point.
definitely nervous playing him for more than one reason, right? I mean, his strength is one of the reasons, but
Yeah.
People are still nervous, yeah. They because
yeah,
like they don't know what to expect exactly. But
yeah,
no, he's got his chances for sure.
yeah. His game against Erdomus was brutal, graphic, incredible.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
Um, I bring up one last topic as we wrap up, draws versus wins in the decisive rounds. I feel like there was a little more decisive action in some of the earlier rounds, and then the last couple rounds we started getting like five or six draws out of the top seven boards. And people were having trouble breaking through. I know Chess Numbers got some flack because his model predicted that there would be that kind of a draw rate.
Mm,
People were telling him, no, once it's the final round and it's like win or go home, right? Like you're in the candidates, you're not, like nobody's going to make a draw anymore.
hmm
So he took flack and then he was right, so to speak, or at least the results vindicated it. What do you guys, how do you guys feel about like the last couple rounds, which you were watching closely? Like, why do we get draws in games where the players are both in must-win situations?
Oh, I think a lot of times the game just goes that way. So, for example, Bluebaum drawing against Keimer. He's up against the wall. He's got a lost position. Keimer makes one small slip and then bam, it's a draw. You know?
Hmm.
Or we see the game Faruja against Giri. Very spicy opening, and Giri finds a move that basically forces a draw, or he has to take a worse position, right?
Yeah.
So it's just in the nature of good chess that draws are going to happen. It's not because they are trying to get a draw,
Hmm.
yeah,
unless you're
draws a
Bluebaum.
natural
Besides
result.
Bluebaum,
Draws a natural result, and I would say like as the tournament gets longer, players get tired. Maybe it becomes harder to win a game, right? People are still putting up very stiff resistance when their backs are against the wall, but yeah, you lose energy and it's hard to break through
yeah.
at the end. On the other hand, tired players tend to make mistakes more often, so you would think that there's more chances for decisive results, especially with all the nerves and stuff on
Yeah.
the line.
That was kind of the general thinking, but yeah, the draw rate was still normal. All right, folks, that's our wrap on the Grand Swiss.
Wait, David, wait. I
And
got one last thing. This last thing could
okay,
be its own separate podcast, but we just
okay.
have to mention it because it's such a big deal. Story of the tournament, the collapse of Gukesh, the complete collapse, falling below number 10 in the world. It affects how we think about the world champion. There hasn't been somebody outside the top 10 besides Ding, and that was very controversial when Ding had his collapse. So at some point, I mean, maybe I have a feeling Gukesh will keep playing. Hopefully, this isn't going to traumatize him. But the question just going forward for me is, are we seeing some kind of collapse from Dude? Time is going to tell, but I think we could talk it forever about it, but I just want to put that out there. That's a key storyline of the tournament.
Yeah, let's just throw that out there. We'll let the fans respond to that one. I wanted to throw another thing out there,
Okay.
similar, because I was just thinking, it's like, the more Magnus doesn't play classical chess,
Yeah.
previously we were giving him a pass for not playing the World Championship because he was still playing some classical and still winning those events. But the more he doesn't play classical, the more we just have to accept that he has quit and withdrawn from classical chess, period. And we have
Mm.
to start treating him at some point, not sure how soon that is, but like we don't consider Garry Kasparov to be the number 2 or number 3 chess player in the world, although he maintains that rating because he doesn't play anymore, right? So at
Hmm.
some point we're gonna have to start giving Magnus the same treatment, I'm sorry to say.
Hmm.
But yeah, Gukesh, he's young. He'll bounce back. He's cool. He's All right, folks. That'll do it. Please check out the podcast on Patreon if you'd like to suggest topics for the future. And thanks everyone for liking, commenting, and subscribing. See you all next time.
Bye.